Um, Hello, welcome, Kwe, Upsaladu. My name is Neil Silcox. I am the Faculty Excellence Developer here at the Maple League of Universities. Um, I'm joining you today from Kchibuktuk in unceded Mi'kma'ki territory. I know we have folks joining us from all over the world, so if you would care to let us know where you're joining in from in the chat, that would be terrific. I'm really excited about this session. Maple League host sessions are an opportunity for us to bring in real luminary thinkers from around the world to share their expertise and their vision with us. And today we've got a really special guest. Our guest is an internationally renowned speaker, a best-selling author of a great book, by the way, which I tore through in a single sitting. He's a world-class and award-winning coach and a prominent educator and leader. He is currently the Vice President Student Affairs at Wilfrid Laurier University. I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Ivan Joseph, and I'm just going to share a little video to get us started. So just one moment.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Thanks, folks. That's one of my absolute favorite videos. And I loved watching it the first time in gray and the second time live. So well done, well done. You know, lots of people ask me, like, what am I here to chat about today? So today I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to do like a little glee mishmash. I'm going to talk a little bit about high performance. I'm going to talk a little bit about grit and confidence and a little bit about hope and optimism, right? In my old life, I used to be a coach, and I coached national championship teams, world championship teams, Olympians, the #1 NBA draft picks. And a lot of the things I talk about is about how do you make sure you build a high performance culture or lead a high performing team. And one of the reasons I show that video is it's because it's from 1997. It's an Apple Super Bowl commercial. It was about $1 million for about 1 minute and 3 seconds of video. And if you remember, Steve Jobs had been kicked out of Apple way back in the early 90s. And for 12 years, the stock tanked. I remember sitting around the table when I was living in Illinois at the time. It was like something like $3 for Apple stock. And we're like, should we get some of that? That should be great. And yeah, I know, I felt it too. I'm not into the business side of things, so that was an opportunity lost. But anyway, long story short, they said to Steve Jobs, you need to come back. We know, like, we had our problems and issues with you. Can you come back? And when he came back, he gathered his team together, and this was the video they launched to showcase how they were going to move forward with Apple. Now, this video for me isn't an endorsement for Steve Jobs or Apple, but it is about the words and the people. Listen to those words again. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers. Then who are the people you see? Amelia Earhart, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Thomas Edison, all these people who had been told one time or another they weren't good enough, who had experienced failure, who had been rejected, who at one time or another said, Amelia Earhart, what do you mean you want to fly an airplane? Women don't fly airplanes. They don't belong out of the house. They don't belong in the kitchen. They don't wear pants. You're not good enough. What do you mean, Edison? You want to take voices in the air and put them on this plastic disc? You want to give people the vote, Martin Luther King? Black people? What, like civil rights, equal rights? All of these things. And while we say these things, it seems strange and odd, but the last line I want you to really pay attention to, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. What Jobs was saying is that high performers, they're the people that have this clear sense of purpose. And organizations must also have a clear sense of purpose. And he was saying this is going to be Apple's. Be the kind of company that changes the world. It wasn't some vision or mission statement or something that we're going to put in a binder and all have this, but we wanted to know it and be about it. Organizations that have this strong sense of purpose, this clarity, this North Star, when things go south, when there's noise going on, they know what they're about. And there's a clear sense of focus. But when organizations have a clear sense of purpose and they recruit people who are like-minded, who also are aligned with that clear sense of purpose, that's when excellence happens. And so this isn't about an organizational sense, although that's important. This is about your clarity of purpose. Who are you and what are you about? How many people, if I was to put this, you know, you could do it in the chats here, like who knows their clear sense of purpose? No, yes, no, you know what? And I'm not asking you to answer it, but we don't spend a lot of time thinking about who are we, what are we about? When there's alignment with that purpose, you know what happens in the organization? Profit goes up, innovation goes up, excellence goes up, employee retention goes up, cohesion goes up. When there's not alignment, conflict is increased, all these things, toxicity. You ever heard somebody say that you're leading, or even yourself, this is not in my job description. Why am I getting to do this? Or do you sit in the car like, oh, trying to drag yourself up stairs because you got to get where you need to go? When we think about clarity of purpose, we need to think about who are we and what are we about. Steve Jobs put a ding in the universe, right? Whoa, that's a pretty good one. My wife's hospital CEO, give a damn. A friend of mine who was a president of a university in downtown Toronto, be disruptive in the pursuit of change, right? Mine, I'm an educator first and foremost. Boom. We want you to think about your clarity of purpose because we want to make sure you're where you're supposed to be and you're in alignment. And if you're not, and if you're leading teams and their people are not, then how do you move towards your greatness? We spend a lot of time thinking here because all the other things I'm going to teach you and talk about and instruct you with don't really matter if we're not sure about who we are and what we're about. So how do we get there? Walk with me and exercise with me, and we'll just do this. These first few questions I want you to do in your head. And then the last one, I'll ask you if you're doing and participating, put it in the chat, right? The last answer. So here's the first question, and I'll play along with you. In the last 12 to 18 months, what's the single most important decision you've made? One where your life was going this way, and all of a sudden it went this way. And I'm not talking like, should I buy a Toyota Sienna or should I buy the Honda Odyssey? Gray or silver? I'm talking like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Whoop. For me, example, you know, if those of you know me, about 12 to 18 months ago, actually 24 months ago, I was sitting on a house on the ocean, right? Lived on Young Avenue in Halifax. Oh, it was great. I had the corner office. I could smell the president's office. I was getting ready. My next move was coming. Oh man, I felt it. I was grooving. Had a really good team. And then it was time for me to go. Packed up my family, sold my house for a loss, took a pay cut, left a prestigious university with a law school, a medical school, a pharmacy, like all the national and global international rankings. And like, yeah, that's not for me. I left. Woo! I was just starting to get in it. Boom. Didn't see that coming. Didn't plan for that. If I was to ask you folks to just reflect for a moment, just think about it, what would your decision be that just took you down a different path? Okay, if you have it, here's the next part of this exercise. Why did you make that decision that you made? Why? But I don't want you to start rambling along with your why. I don't want it blah, blah, blah. I want you to get tighter. I want you to be short and tight and concise. And when you're short and tight and concise, I want you to think about it in 7 words. But I don't want your public 7 words, right? The ones that you tell people when you're networking or when you're at the bar or at the pool and you got your champagne, or if you're me, your fake ginger ale that looks like wine. I want you to be your authentic, genuine why. So my public why is like, oh yeah, I packed up my family, I moved. Yeah, sold my money. Yeah, okay, why? I could say I was ready for a new challenge. That's 7 words, my public networking why. Right? That's my save face why. But if I was to tell you my genuine and authentic why, it would be, I wanted a seat at the table. Boom. Well, that changes the tone and tenor. I wanted a seat at the table. That's really why I made the decision to leave. to move in a completely different direction. And the thing is I'm honest with myself, and I'm really, really, really frank. That helps me to get to the core value of who I am and what I'm about. Sometimes we want to tell our public and our networking lies, and those aren't true, and they're disingenuous, and they don't allow us to move towards where we fit. I wanted a seat at the table. Let's boil that down now to the final question. And those of you who've been participating with me, you can write it in the chat. All right. The last question is, tell me what that means in a one-word value. Tell me what I left my family, or I left it, I packed them up. I said, okay, we're going, we're leaving that job. We're starting all over. We left it. Why? I wanted a seat at the table. But if I was to say what that word was, that word for me would be respect. What would your word be? And as I see some of them, I see, Neil, you had the same word as me: growth, purpose, freedom, right? Hope, care. And these are the words sometimes I see: opportunity. Sometimes I'll see the word money, and I'll remind people that money is not a value. Money is a thing, a noun, security, whatever it is. And as I see these words that come through, whether it's love, whether it's opportunity, whether it's empathy, whether it's connection, whether it's growth, whether it's freedom, whether it's respect, here's the next part of this question: is what does it look like in your job, in your day-to-day interactions? When I think about the word respect, what it looks like to me is it means I'm invited to the meeting. It means there's no meeting before the meeting, if you know what I mean, and there's definitely no meeting after the meeting. It means that I am part of the meetings. It means, hey, when I put my hand up, people say, yeah, what do you think? It means people say, Dr. J, what do you think from your experience? Can you help us? Can you advise us? It means ultimately I feel like I matter and I belong. When you put your words of cohesion or purpose or justice or connection or freedom or care, it's important that you really concretely say, this is what it looks like. Because if you don't know what it looks like, then you can't hang your hat on your purpose. And when it's not there, what are you going to do about it? Because what happened is I remember not feeling it. It's like I was becoming miserable. I didn't like the way I was leading. I started hoarding resources. I started being the same defensive and aloof and shieldy guy. That's not the kind of leader I wanted to be. It was time for me to move towards my greatness. I say this to you because if you're like, holy crap, if there's a moment right here, it's like, I'm not sure, then what are you going to do about it? I don't regret leaving the place where I didn't feel like I mattered and I belonged. And I'm not insulting anybody or any institution, but there's systems that are at play. There's things that are valuable to me that I have to wear and own. And when that happens, I get to lead from a place of authenticity. What was keeping me from going before was sometimes fear, sometimes the comfortable old shoe, sometimes that whole worry about shame and blame and worrying about what people are thinking. When you think about building and living a high performance life, move towards your greatness by being genuinely who you are. When also the other thing I want you to think about when building a high performing life, and I saw somebody put it in the chat, is this whole thing about cohesion and how important that is towards excellence. When they looked at the NBA basketball championship teams, they said, no, the Wall Street Journal did a study and said, let's predict who would win the championship teams. And they looked at #1 draft picks, no. Salaries, no. Most all-stars, no. Big time colleges, no. The only thing that was able to predict the team that would win the most was the team that had the most fist bumps, high fives, high tens, chest bumps, butt taps, gestures of love and affection on the bench, right? All the things, yeah, what done. Over the course of the season, the team that had the most connections, physical touches amongst themselves, was the team most likely to win the championship. They called this social cohesion. In high performance sport, we know there's task cohesion, how well you do your job, and social cohesion, how well we're connected to each other. Heck, in organizations, it's the same. We spend a lot of time thinking about task cohesion. Oh, policies, processes, onboarding systems. But we don't spend a lot of time saying about social cohesion. The lunchroom's gone. The baseball leagues are gone. The potlucks are gone. We're more virtual than ever before. And we forgot how to connect with each other. Now, for those of you who are from HR, I'm not saying go around and butt tap people because Dr. J said it was okay. I want everybody to keep their job. But what I am saying is, have we left space to each for just a small talk, just the simple things that help us join together, right? I remember my budget person coming to me one day when I was at another institution saying, everybody hates me, nobody likes me. I'm like, what do you mean? What's going on? Well, I show up to the room and all I get is the cold shoulder. I said, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, it's just like nobody likes me. And I said, okay, let me pay attention. And so I look and I see him. And every time he goes in the room, he usually has two messages. Number one message, guys, budget is tight this year. Please stop spending. Oh gosh, that sucks. And then his other message, hey, budget is really tight this year, folks. 3% budget cut starting now. Well, hell, no wonder nobody wants you to come into the door. It's like you're wearing a black robe and a skull mask and a scythe and like, can I come in? Nobody wants death walking in their door. You bring only bad news. So I tell you what I want you to do, my budget guy. I'm not going to share his name because I don't want you to figure him out. I want you to start doing things called spontaneous conversations. My old dean used to call it the ministry of presence. I want you to hang out in the space of the people that you're living, right? I just want you to hang out. You're working with them. I just want you to pop in. You're not allowed to talk work. You can only talk about, well, I don't know what to talk about. Well, you got two things I know you love. You got your new baby. I know you're proud to be a dad and you love to fish. That's it. Okay, all right, I can do that. And true enough, like any A-type budget personality guy, what does he do? He goes into his Google Calendar and I see him Monday morning at 8 o'clock, spontaneous conversation with Fred. Talk about this fish story and that Tuesday afternoon. Like he can't help it, he plugs it in, but we're closer, I'll take it. And all of a sudden, 3-4 months later, I see him. He's like, oh my gosh, how's it going? It's amazing. What's happening? He goes, oh my gosh, people like me. It's different. Something's changed. I don't know what it is. You know what changed? He became not Andrew, the budget protector. Became Andrew, the guy who with the fish story that got away. Andrew, the guy who has a baby who has colic. Andrew, a guy who's learning how to figure out what it means to have a toothing baby in this. He became a human being, a person. And when you see people differently, they were more willing and likely to be a part of the solution. People came up with an idea that I didn't even have about how to solve a budget problem. Oh man, I got invited to this. When's the last time we left space in our meetings for just small talk? I remember one time when I was building Maple Leaf Gardens and we had a government grant. It was for $20 million. But in order to get the money from the government, we had to spend $20 million. So we really had to spend $40 million in a 9-month period. It was tight. So I started getting to do the work. Meetings, we're just not moving around. We're fooling. Like, let's go. And all of a sudden, I started to see employee morale start to go like this. I'm like, what is happening? And what happened when his employee morale started to dip, I went to the HR and like, wow, what's going on? What's changing? I don't know what to say to you, Ivan, but you're not this special leader. You're not this technical guru. I'm like, thank you, I think. She goes, what made you special was the space you allowed for people. When you would cancel a meeting for the first 20 minutes and just take us to ice cream, or when you would go around and everybody had to share something they were proud of achieving, or everybody had to share something they did on the weekend, or you told everybody to show up with a joke, whatever it is, or if you had like, you had a spoon or a fork, you can only eat with one for the rest of your life. Which one would you choose? What's your favorite vacation, winter holiday or summer holiday? All right, you could only wear one color. What color would it be? When you ask those questions, we got to know each other. We got to connect. We got to laugh. You remember when you asked people whether they were dog people or cat people and all the jokes that came with that? We lost sight of those things and we just got to be about the work. The narrowness of the work left people disconnected. Again, to the principle of cohesion and mattering and belonging. You can't live a high performance life if we're not connected. And for those of you who are the scientists on this call, you know what happens about dopamine as we get past the age of 27. Our dopamine levels start to fade. We can't produce dopamine at the same level. Dopamine is what I call as a psychologist, the happiness juice, the thing that gives you a bounce, the thing that just has you a song in your heart and a skip in your step. Well, when you think about it, we have to trick our body into producing it. And one of the ways we can do that is relationships, or the power of cohesion. But how have we thought about relationships in the world that we live in? They're passing relationships, passing connections. They're Instagram likes, they're Facebook friends. They're not the people who love you unconditionally, the ones who speak your truth, even though you sometimes don't want to hear it, the ones who have your back, your ride or die. We've lost sight of the people and we get so busy. Sometimes we're as young parents, we're just coming and going. Sometimes we're young professionals trying to go and climb the corporate ladder, got to publish, got to do this, got to be in this committee. And we've lost sight of those friends that had our backs, the ones where we pick up the phone and time flies. Those things really matter. We'll come back to dopamine later and talk about the role that plays in hope and optimism, but don't lose sight of the role of cohesion. When I think about high performance, I want to remind everybody that it's not this magic button that you just take. It's not like all of a sudden you can be excellent in everything just because you had the red pill or the blue pill, or you're in the matrix and they can just put it in the back of your head and you download it. Excellence doesn't come by accident. It comes with intentional steps through the power of repetition, repetition, repetition. But it's repetition paired with persistence. And when you experience failure, the question I always like to ask myself is, what am I here to learn? You know, there's so many times that we forget about asking that question. We hear, we put our hand up, oh, it's good to fail. Everybody's fail fast. We know all this, yes. And those are the common jargons and everybody's been there. But for those of us who truly experience failure, it's hard. It's hard because we want to sometimes hide. We want to put our head in the sand. We want to have shame. Oh my gosh, it hurts our pride. It hurts our ego. I just failed not so long ago. The first time I've ever been fired in my life. I'm 52 years old. I was on the national team coach. We just went to like literally 30 seconds away from getting to the World Cup finals. And they scored. They tied the game. We tied against Trinidad and Tobago in front of 15,000 fans in Tobago. And a week later, thank you very much, Dr. Joseph. We're not interested. We're going to go in a different direction. And of course, they put it all in the papers and it's all in my university. It's here, it's everywhere. I'm like, oh, it was hard. It was hard. And I could have put my head in the sand, like, oh, well, yeah. But the question I asked myself is, what am I here to learn? And if we don't ask that question, if we don't sit in there for a little while, then we haven't learned anything from the failure, then that failure hasn't advanced our career. Then we don't think about it in terms of the lessons learned and what will you apply. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to be public about it. Sometimes you got to make sure you're asking people for their advice, or you're letting it be sitting on it and wearing it and not so quick to move from it. Sometimes you got to live there in your head, but if it's living there too long, then that's detrimental. So there's that balance. How you choose to interpret failure really also sets high performers apart. Let me share with you a story. Those of you might know that I love a liberal arts school, so that's why I love the Maple League. I'm from a small school in Iowa, 1,200 students, middle of nowhere. No stoplights, no bar, no drinking on campus, no Walmart, no McDonald's, oh man, but I loved it. Anyway, long story short, I win the national championship and I come over and I get this fancy new job in Toronto as the director of athletics at Ryerson. They plot me in front of a city with that ends with just a bajillion people. I'm in charge of a budget that ends in the word illions. I gotta lead people and manage people. I have imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I wanna I see myself walking down the street. I'm wearing a suit for the first time. I'm like, this is not me. They would sit there, and I remember we're doing this major project and they'd ask me a question like, oh, what about the FF&E of this? And I'm like, oh my God, let me consult with my stakeholders and get back to you. I'd go home and I'd Googleize everything. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I wanted to hit my easy button and go back to my fiefdom in Iowa where I was in charge. But you know what? Okay, we all have this imposter syndrome. I can work through this. I could do this. Let me do something I know I'm good at. I'm going to coach soccer because I know I'm good at coaching soccer. So I coach soccer and I lose more games in 2 weeks than I did my previous 3 years. And I could feel everybody looking at me. You're not so good a hot shot of a coach now, are you, Dr. J? We told you can't win here. This school doesn't do athletics. We're no good. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm sitting at Ryerson one day. And if you've ever been downtown Toronto, you know Ryerson's right by Eaton Center. And there's this oasis called the Kerr Hall. It's surrounded by trees. And I hear this voice, Coach Munn. And I look over and it's the specimen of a Caribbean man. It's just a chiseled. He comes out of the pine trees. He says, Coach Munn, I read The Secret. I saw your TED Talk. I put it on my dream board. I put it on my vision board. I want to come play for you and help you win a championship. And I'm like, I look at him, his shirt is so tight. It's just rippling muscles. Everything is just bulging as he walks towards me, just ripple, ripple. He's like an A535 commercial. I'm like, thank you, Jesus, as manna falls from the sky. Because I look over here and all I got is these skinny legged guys. I'm like, this is what I was looking for. I'm like, yes, what's your name? He says, Kyle. Kyle, show up to practice. We're glad to have you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Kyle shows up the next day and he walks into practice at Lamport Stadium. Ripple, 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 pow, pow, ripple, ripple, ripple. He takes down the field. He's like a black blur, or Usain Bolt lightning. He goes zooming by. He kicks the ball. Boom. He is a donkey. He's terrible. It's like he has upside down spoons on his feet. He's like goat hoofs. But he looks at me, these puppy dog eyes. Hey, coach. I'm like, not quite yet. Did I make the team? I'm like, oh, let's keep going. And I see him head this ball. He heads this ball. I see him watching it. He's getting ready and he heads it. Boom. And it's like he has an octagon on his head. You don't know what corner it's going to hit. He's absolutely atrocious. But I'm a dad. I don't want to crush his heart. I don't want to break his spirit. He looks at me and I say, Kyle, why don't you become our equipment manager? Yes, for those of you who are thinking it, I am a coward. And he washes uniforms, he carries balls, he shines things, he does all these things, he does all this stuff. And after a hard summer, working out, really paying attention, really getting into it, really training hard, he tries out for the team again. And guess what? Yeah, he still doesn't make it. His feet are like a rubber tree plantation. It's like he's terrible, terrible. And he looks at me with these puppy dog brown eyes and says, yeah, coach, did I make it? I said, no. Coach, can you give me some feedback? What do I got to do to make this team? I said, Kyle, I got a stud over here. He's an all-Canadian. He's great. Here's a person in the middle. He's even better. And this one over here, I only need 2, but I got 3. He's the best one of them yet. It's almost impossible for you to make this team. What do you think Kyle hears? But you're saying there's a chance, eh, coach? I'm like, if I had here, I would pull it out. But maybe confident high performers, maybe they interpret feedback a little differently. They interpret setbacks a little differently. But my wife would say, no, that is delusional. There's nothing about different to interpret. You are very specific. It's almost impossible for you to make this team. Long story short, he does not show up the next year. Thank the Lord. Oh my gosh. The 4th year, we're starting to win now. We're starting to get there. We're getting closer. But I'm one position short, center back, my position, the last man standing, the one who protects the goal before the goaltender. Every center back I've coached has been either an all-Canadian, an all-American, or a pro. I know that position inside out. I call a coach in Scarborough up there, just east of Toronto, say, can you send me a center back? I need one. He goes, I got 3. I don't need 3. I just need 1. Well, I'll send you all 3. You pick. Okay. And I remember it clear as day. I'm sitting at Lamport Stadium. The sun is in my eye, so I just see these 3 silhouettes. And it's almost like it's like a scene from a music video. A little less conversation, a little bit of action. These 3 guys walking, a little bum. And as the sun opens up and the silhouette blurs and opens, who is it? It's Kyle. A guy cut not once, not twice, but oh my God, I got them a 3rd time. But oh gosh, okay. He's stronger, he's faster, he looks like he's gotten better, so we'll give him a chance. 50 people are in that tryout, we're down to 25, he's still there. 25 people are down to 12, he's still there. 12 down to 6 after 3 years, oh my God. 6 down to 3, I'm finally gonna take 1. And guess what, after 3 years of trying, guess who makes the team? Not Kyle. No, I know everybody wants a happily ever after Rudy story here. Feel like you're entitled to something just because they put the effort in. I'm like, what the heck? I thought this was supposed to be a happily ever after story. And he still doesn't make it. But I don't have the heart to tell him because they're all looking at me like birds. I'm like, hey, folks, we're going to Syracuse. One of you will meet us in Guelph. Why don't you join in and I'll call you and let you know. Now, before I tell you the rest of the story, I want to remind you who I am. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. 6-time coach of the year. Check. World Cup? Yes. Olympics? Yes. Number 1 draft picks? Yes. Pros? Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Put that in the parking lot and just remember it over there. I'm also going across the border. I'm really cheap. I don't want to hit the roaming charges. Ring, ring, ring. I call up the guy to join. Coach, man, I made the team. I called the wrong guy by accident and I have a moment of panic. Kyle, I just want to take a longer look at you. Will you join us, please, in Guelph? I'm like, my sister's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, what do I say? I called you by accident, Kyle. You didn't make it. I just called you. Prank. I had a moment. I just panicked. I'm only human. I fixed that later. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to call the right guy. We'll sort that out. We play Syracuse. We don't smell the goal. We lose 6-1. And to add injury to insult, my starting center back, my stud that I love, he's out for a year with a head injury. Okay, I got 2 more. Let's bounce back. Let's regroup. We play Hartwick. We win that game 2-1. But at what cost? It cost me my starting center back with a knee injury for 2 weeks. Okay, I got 1 player left. I can play this game against Guelph, and I got a field player I'll put in. The night before at Guelph, food poisoning. I kid you not, I couldn't have written a script any differently. We got nobody. I looked to the left, I looked to the right, I got fly footprints, I got Pigpen from Charlie Brown, I got nobody. I got to put Kyle in the game. A guy who's only there by accident, who should not be in there. And as the great, outstanding coach I am, I send him in with some words of strong encouragement. Kyle, don't screw this up. And off he goes. And bloody hell, if he doesn't play like a man possessed. He chases this guy down from behind and he saves a goal as it crosses the goal line, leaves his skin on the turf. He goes in the tackle and there's just bodies flapping all over him. It's like he's got teeth sticking out of his forehead. Oh my God, he comes out of the scrum like Gandalf. No man shall pass. He protects the goal with all his might. In the final minute of the game, I watch a ball come from the corner, a big long kick. I see his eyes get wide. I see him jump, soar, turn his body off his head and into the goal. We win the game 1-0. Like a scene out of Chariots of Fire, all I hear is, Shah! Kyle, they carry him off the field. He's the man of the match. I have no choice but to put Kyle on this team, a guy who's only there by accident. In my 25-year coaching career, I've had only 1 undefeated season. Guess who my starting center back was the first time a Ryerson Rams team made it to the national championship? Kyle. Whew. What's the moral of that long story, folks? And please, nobody type in the chat, what a poor judge of talent I am. If there was anybody that should have told Kyle he wasn't good enough, remember those blah, blah, blah credentials? It should have been me. But what I want to remind you, what I want you to take from this story is, who do you give your power away to? Who do you let dissuade you from your goals? Who do you let tell you, yeah, you're right, I'm not good enough. Yeah, I can't do this. How many times have you let the ex-husband, the ex-wife, the mailman, some cubicle mate, some former boss, some stranger you don't even know say, you're right, yeah, I can't do it, I'm not good enough. It's not just about who do you give your power away. It's also about getting away from the people who will tear you down. Because if you're not careful, all that negativity, all that disbelief, all that really harsh feedback, you'll start to believe it. Because those things will influence your thoughts. And when your thoughts influence your beliefs influence your actions, and this self-deprecating cycle will happen. You'll stop putting your hand up. You'll start taking risks. You'll stop innovating. You will stop believing in yourself. What happens when you allow all those people to come at you? All that negativity. Kyle, yes, he was persistent. Yes, he was determined. But most importantly is he didn't take all that feedback around him and own it and allow it to impact his behaviors. And it's hard because sometimes those people are in our family. What boundaries are you going to put up? Sometimes they're in your workplace. What roles and how will you remove yourself from those situations so that you don't become toxic to yourself? And what happens when we do that is it starts to change our very own belief system and the stuff we tell ourselves. Yeah, you're right. I'm no good. Yeah, I can't do this. Yeah. And I'm not talking that you need to only find warm Goldilocks land to live in, like, oh, my little pony and rainbows and brights. But I want you to stop. And if you're a leader, it doesn't mean that you can't be critical and have high expectations, but recognize the difference between negativity and critical. Negative, this is why it won't work. This is not good enough. This isn't what I was looking for. Critical, this isn't what I was looking for. Have you thought about this? This won't work because X, Y, and Z. Have you thought about this? Hey, this isn't where we're going. I want it to be more in this direction. Negative, what's wrong, what's broken, what's this, critical. Here is a path forward. A little hope, a little optimism, a little light at the end of the tunnel when you're leading people. It's important for you to give feedback that inspires a path forward. When I talk about that negativity, you'll find yourself sometimes saying this thing, oh my God, I'm no good. Stop it. What did I just do there? Stop it. These are called centering exercises in my world of psychology, of sports psychology. Physical exercises meant to stop the negative talk. There's enough people telling me all critical things. Hey, Ivan, you got the job as a VP because you're Black. You're the diversity hire. Hey, you got the job because you're a woman. You're the diversity hire. I can do the job better than you. You're not even good enough. I don't even know why you got the job. Well, that sucks. You only got it because you know the boss. Stop it. I wish I was skinnier. I wish I was fatter, not as fat in these pants. I wish my hair was better. I wish I had this. There's a constant tape we all play ourselves because we don't think we're good enough. The next time you see somebody's head go down or your head goes down or you go into that negative space, do your centering exercise. Watch professional athletes the next time they make a mistake. They'll point to the person who passed them the good ball. You'll see them clap out to the crowd. That's to remind them to live in the moment. When you dwell in that past, you're going to make a mistake again. And replace it with an affirmation. There's a reason my book's called You Got This. When I came over, the director of athletics, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. Stop it, Ivan, you got this. Double clap, rub my hands. What's going to be your trick, your trade? And what are going to be your affirmations? If you've watched my TED Talk, you know mine. I am the captain of my ship and the master of my fate. Borrowed from Nelson Mandela and Invictus. Nobody outworks me. I can learn anything. Sometimes things didn't come easy to me. I can learn this. I can learn anything. When things are there, I had to persist. Nobody outworks me. Straight, firm, tight affirmations that I had control over. When I was feeling overwhelmed, I am the captain of my ship and the master of my fate. Here's the science behind affirmations. People that use 3 of them a day. Lou Bromowski, 2006 from Harvard. 3 affirmations a day in the creative world of problem solving, it's like 17 to 19% more productive. 3 affirmations a day in logistics, problem solving, analytics, moving the needle in the haystack, complex problems, diagnostics. You're 23 to 27% more efficient and faster to solve complex problems. And if you're in the revenue generation world, closing the deal, sales, you're 27 to 30% increase in sales. 3 affirmations a day. They change your chemical makeup. They change the way you think. They change your ability to persist. They inspire hope and optimism and build high performance. So what are you going to do? Figure out your 3 affirmations and put them by your mirror where you're brushing your teeth. Put them by your bed. Put them in your journal. Put them by your computer screen or on your dashboard just before you go into the office. These are simple steps you can do to change the way you think and to change your actions and your belief system. Because we're all going to be there where we're not feeling like we're good enough. We've got this promotion or we've had a setback. How you respond to that failure will really dictate how you rise above it. As we think about it, when we think about it, I want you to think that there's role that hope and optimism plays in high performance because it builds your grit and your resilience. Dopamine plays a big piece in that. That's that song in your heart that we talked about earlier. When we talk about relationships, it's also hobbies and things that create flow. Go back to Csikszentmihalyi, another sports psychologist. If we find things that make time fly for us, we increase our dopamine levels, right? This old friend that you haven't spoken to in college, a hobby for me, it's whitewater rafting out there in Nova Scotia. It's the Medway River, right? For my wife, it's knitting. For some people, it's working on cars. Some people, it's reading a book. All of a sudden, you pick up your Harry Potter book at 8 o'clock. The next thing you know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. What are the things that you do that create flow? Those things build your dopamine levels. Savor, taking moments to savor the things that are good in your life. Taking moments to savor the happiness, the wins. And last and certainly not least, writing a letter to a mentor. When you write a letter to a mentor, your dopamine levels are spiked 9 to 30 times immediately after. A researcher by the name of Seligman out of the University of Penn noted this. In fact, if you come back 30 days later, there's still elevated levels of dopamine in your system. Nobody does anything alone. And we need to remember that. Somebody opened the door for you. Somebody gave you advice. Somebody opened and helped you get to where you are. Take a moment to reach back and thank them. It will do wonders for you, and it will do wonders for them. Last and certainly not least, I want to remind you that you have a role in building the confidence in yourself and others. Write a letter to yourself, your personal brag sheet about all the things you're great at. My letter goes something like this: Dear Ivan, congratulations on choosing the right woman to marry. You set a goal of getting your PhD before the age of 40. You did it. You won a national championship. You raised 3 great kids and they're getting launched. All the things that you're proud of achieving, you need to write them down, because there's going to be moments when you're like, oh, I can't do anything. Stop it. Bring out that letter and read it to yourself. I needed to read it when I took that job as a director of athletics. I needed to read it when I first became a vice provost. I needed to read it when I first became a vice president, because you need that to remind you of how great you are. Somebody like, wasn't that egotistical to write a letter or your personal brag sheet? No, ego is what you tell others about yourself. Confidence is what you tell yourself. Imagine the kid who's at the ball toss, or the track and field meet during the day, you won your ribbons. You don't put them on and say, check me out as I walk around the meet. Look how great I am. No, you put them in your bag and you go home at night. And you go home at night, you put them in the mirror and you look in the sun and say, yes, I'm the greatest. And you shout it at the top of your lungs. That's confidence. Remind yourself of your greatness. Nobody does anything alone. Let's end with where we started. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. That's what it means to be a high performer when you think about the people in that video. People may ignore you, they may vilify you, but the only thing they shouldn't do is change you. Remember that. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Be clear on your purpose. But if you only take one thing from this talk, take this today. Believe in yourself, folks, and the rest of the world will too. Thanks for having me, Maple League. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Ivan, this is beautiful. Oh my God, I got so many notes. We have a few minutes and I would love to have a little Q&A. And we can run this pretty loosey-goosey. If you'd like to flick your camera on and put your hand up IRL or raise the hand function, that'd be great. If you have a question you'd like to put into the chat, please put it there and I will, and I'll read it out. And I've got one question already. What is your favorite book on emotional intelligence / regulation?
Oh, I don't know if I have a favorite book on emotional intelligence / regulation, but I'll tell you what, I have a favorite book on, I'll say sports psychology and mental toughness, which is Golf is Not a Game of Perfect.
Thank you. Jessica says, we don't talk about tapping into our purpose or alignment nearly enough.
Jessica, it's so true, right? When I'm not aligned, I lead differently. I become toxic to myself. I become toxic to the team I'm leading, right? And that's when you have to get out of your own way and move towards where there is. And when there is alignment, then it's not work. I turned down the job at Ryerson a bunch of times. And Sheldon said, the president called me and he's like, why won't you come? And I said to him, what you're asking me to do, I need to break a whole bunch of rules. And nobody's going to be happy. I can't do what you want. You want me to transform an athletic department and make them #1? That doesn't happen with the policies and processes. And he said to me this, tell me what stupid rules are keeping you from doing your job, and I will help you break them. That's when I knew it was the right place for me.
I love that. Ruth, Birdie, I see your cameras. I don't know if you have a question or you just wanted to be at the table. Birdie, you have a question? Can you bring it in?
Yeah, I do. I just want to ask you about this social cohesion because it's really interesting. And I'm just coming from a meeting where we got so task focused that we all like totally broke down and decompensated and melted. And so I just like, how do you do that in a structure that just is constantly giving you more to do? And if you're, you've got to get that gold ring and you don't have the power and because that's kind of what we're grappling with right now. So just curious about your thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So what I've learned is that from leading teams, like in athletics and being a director and being a VP, that the closer my teams are connected to each other, the more willing they are to work towards each other. And the more willing they are to do the job in a way that helps everybody, right? So because we need them to see it from everybody's lens. So I always argue that taking time for social cohesion helps elevate and expedite our work. So some people will see the things that we do as a distraction from taking away the work. So I really want that to be known, is that those things improve efficiency, communications, all those sorts of things. So number one. So number two is I always leave just 10 minutes for it, right? And it's just simple questions. Sometimes it's things like values clarification. Okay, we're going to come and share these three things. In a perfect world, I'd go away and do a retreat, which I've done before. We're going to do a personality type retreat. We're going to do a values clarification retreat. And there's going to be all these different things about how we solve things, how we take, people look at how we each think differently, all those sorts of stuff. Because at the end of the day, why I want social cohesion is I'll know that I'm making it up, but if Bob is a guy that doesn't like his information up front, right? He wants it 3 days before, not up front, like just a meeting before. We know that about him. Or Ivan is a guy that's always going to look at the critical piece. It's not personal, right? Just recognize that's the way he thinks. So then, can you leave even 5 or 7 minutes for just simple questions that allow people to reveal who they are? So here's 5 simple ones that I always do. Number 1, right? Really simple. Share something, right, you're really proud of achieving over the course of your life, right? All right. Number 2, and this is like something like, okay, maybe you start with something really simple. Share your first job experience, your first professional job experience. Again, we start getting people. Share why you joined student affairs. That's one that I use, right? Sometimes I go into a vulnerable sense, right? Share something that embarrassed you at work, right? Oh man, when I get to a team, I do a series of 16 questions, and one starts with something as simple as share the origin of your name, share your vacation, but it ends with share something that the last time you cried, share the last time you made a mistake. Again, simple risk to high risk. And again, depends what questions you use, depends on how close you are with your team. That's a long answer. Sorry, Bertie, but it's really critical.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. I wrote those questions down. I'm going to put them in the chat for everyone. Kelly has a question from the chat that I'll read out because it's a great one. And I know we have a lot of people who work directly with students here. What techniques do you recommend to motivate students to perform? Struggling with giving enough information and coaching for students to do their tasks on their own, but they still aren't meeting our research project deadlines.
Yeah. So this is a good one, right? So as a coach, I always think about motivation as intrinsic and extrinsic, right? And I also want to know that every student is motivated differently. So there's not a blanket piece. So for example, I know for one student, if I want to get him motivated, I better leave him quiet, right? As if I want him, I need him just to be left alone. Another student, right, I got to get in his face. I got to build his arousal level. So how well do you know your students? And how many different types of motivational pieces that you need? So some students, they're intrinsically motivated. You got to do nothing. Some are going to be motivated towards the reward. Some are going to be motivated towards the competition, whatever it is. Typically, this is the thing that you have to recognize, is that you cannot motivate all students the same. And number 2, not all students are going to be responding to you. So part of it is that you have to decide. This is a hard thing for student affairs. Who are we going to leave behind? What? We shouldn't leave anybody behind. That's not right. That's not what we do. We cannot bring everybody. And so your job is to decide, as the part of your community, who's reaching who. So for example, my job might be to reach the high performers, meaning I'm going to get in here and I'm going to send this incentive. Anybody that achieves this goal, boom, they're going to get a 30% increase in their stipend, or they're going to get an automatic 10% bonus, whatever those things are. And so you're going to have your early achievers, like they're going to be driven by that. So they're going to be driven by that. Some people are going to be motivated by the relationship that you have with them. They don't need that reward. They need to be connected, and they need to feel like they're not disappointing you or letting you down. That's different. They couldn't even care about the 30% increase or the bonus or that. They're thinking about your reward and your relationship with them, because that's what really motivates them. And then there's a group on the bottom. It doesn't matter what you do, you can't push a rope, right? No matter how we want to do it, they're not getting it, right? And even though you're giving them the coaching and doing all these tasks on their own, we have to recognize that some people aren't maturationally or biologically ready to fulfill them. And instead of us looking at it as a failure of ourselves, it's we might have structured the task at a place where they're not ready to accomplish it. And that's really hard for some people. I remember doing that myself as a young coach. Why can't these people do this? What's happening right here? When 80% of the people can't do it, then it's how did I structure this that we saw it so big that they got demotivated because they could not take the little steps along the way. And that's a key too.
That's such great advice. And I think sometimes the students who struggle so much are the ones that we can see the potential in them, but they're often just not there yet themselves.
This is
Any
spoken
other
from a guy who
questions?
flunked out of university, and people tried to help me, and I needed to hit the bottom in order to find my own motivation.
That's very comforting to know sometimes. I've got a question. You talk about these positive affirmations and doing 3 a day. I have a sense, I have a real I'm so shy to say them. Is there like a stepstone into this project? Do you have to just rip off the Band-Aid and start with it? Yeah, and I see in my students as well. There's like a fear of being cheesy that
yeah. So sometimes I ask people, because it's hard to find it, is I ask them to find somebody who knows them well and say, hey, I got an assignment. I need you to send 2 or 3 things about me that you think I'm good at, right? And so sometimes it's hard for us, especially if our confidence is low and we're not right where we need to be, right? Can you send me one, reach out to 2 of your 3 friends and say, hey, I'm doing a project. Can you send me 1 or 2 skills you think I'm really good at? And then they'll send them to you. It's like, whoa, I didn't even. When you do all those sorts of things, it changes and it makes it easy. It makes it easy for you to be able to state the affirmation. And then the simple piece is, I always say some go-to affirmations should be simple and tight. I'm good at what I choose to be good at. What? I'm good at what I choose to be good at, right? I can do hard things, right? There's an easy one. I can do hard things, right? So that's where I always start.
Great. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. This has been really terrific. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate it, Ivan.